The episode opens up with Topa in a simulation where he battles with the Kaylons. The Moclan kid sits in the captain's chair and gives orders to an all-Moclan crew. Unfortunately, the Kaylons destroy Topa's vessel. Meanwhile, Kelly enters the simulator for a workout session. There, she learns about Topa's desire to become a Union officer, so she volunteers to assist Topa in studying for the Union Point entrance exam. Eventually, Topa opens up to Kelly that he has been facing an internal identity crisis from early childhood to the present. As he isn't happy with his life, he's hopeful that becoming a Union officer will solve his problem. Being aware of Topa's reassignment surgery, Kelly realizes that his gender identity is the reason for an emotional turmoil. Therefore, she goes to discuss the matter with Bortus and Clyden. As expected, Bortus calmly listens to Kelly and states they haven't decided about whether or not to inform Topa about his true identity, whereas Clyden fervently objects, mentioning hundreds of years of Moclan tradition. After Kelly departs, Bortus and Clyden argue about whether they should disclose Topa's surgery or leave their child in the dark. Clyden, born female, advocates for ignorance, claiming that it'll save Topa emotional distress down the line. However, Bortus believes they should be honest with their kid. In the next scene, Topa goes to Kelly's office and informs her that Clyden won't allow them to train together anymore. Hence, he will have to take the training sessions from Mercer. Later, Topa asks Isaac how he felt during his deactivation, and if he was unhappy with the crew reviving him. Sensing potential suicidal tendency in Topa, Isaac reports to Kelly, who visits the boy and encourages him to explore the various delicacies in the food synthesizers. While searching the database, Topa discovers a coded file and goes through it. Back in Bortus's quarters, he and Clyden find Topa staying alone. The kid confronts his parents and asks if he was born a female. Clyden denies it. However, Bortus explains they didn't feel it was necessary to disclose it to Topa. Enraged, Topa yells at his parents for keeping him in the dark all these years. Meanwhile, Clyden storms out and lashes into Kelly, who restrains him immediately, threatening to break his arms if he lays his narrow-minded decisions on Topa. Sent Topa the password to the coded file. Bortus tearfully admits he didn't want to conceal this from Topa any longer, so he gave his child the ammunition needed to learn the truth. In the next scene, Topa desires to meet a Moclan female, so Kelly takes him to the simulator. She unlocks the simulation from the Moclan trial before Topa's surgery, wherein Hevina delivers a moving speech in support of allowing Topa to live as a female. As Topa watches, he is spellbound with teary eyes. Later, Kelly discusses Topa's misery with Claire and Mercer. They then propose to perform a reverse surgery on Topa, allowing the kid to live as her true self. Clyden objects while Bortus gives his consent for Claire to perform the procedure. However, while discussing it with Admiral Howland, she warns not to perform the surgery since it can jeopardize relations with Moclus and lead to their withdrawal from the Union, making everyone more vulnerable to Kaylon attacks. When Bortus and Kelly try to break the news to Topa, he gets shattered and tells he's tired of other people forcing their decisions on him. Empathizing with the kid, Claire decides to resign from the Union so that she can perform the reversal on Topa. Although she isn't allowed to perform the surgery as a Union officer, she can obviously do it as a civilian doctor. Mercer and Kelly object to her decision, pointing out that it will ruin her decades of professional career. Thankfully, Isaac steps in to do the procedure with some guidance from Claire. Next, they make a plan to distract all the crew members by conducting a ship-wide event, while Isaac performs Topa's surgery in the sickbay. Bortus and Ty perform during the event. While the entire ship is busy enjoying the event, Isaac takes Topa into the sickbay and prepares to perform the surgery. Just then, Clyden arrives and tries to prevent the procedure from commencing. However, Topa sticks by his decision to reverse his identity. Isaac stops Clyden from taking Topa and throws him out of sickbay. Then, Isaac begins the procedure. Soon, Topa wakes up after the procedure and walks to the mirror. As she gazes at herself, she smiles. Later, Admiral Howland arrives at the Orville and confronts Mercer and Kelly regarding the procedure, reprimanding them for flagrantly disobeying a superior officer's command. Fortunately, the Moclans will not withdraw from the Union. Turns out, they are now even more encouraged in their quest to overpower the Kaylon since Isaac performed the procedure. When Mercer and Kelly claim they didn't know Isaac would do such a thing, Admiral Howland warns them not to repeat such mistakes and jeopardize the Union's relations with other planets. Before departing, Howland asks them to pass her best wishes to Topa. Elsewhere, Clyden packs to leave Orville. Bortus and Topa try to persuade him to stay, but Clyden doesn't listen. Before leaving, Clyden mocks Topa and wishes she was never born. After Clyden leaves, Bortus turns to his daughter and reassures that she's perfect and that he loves her. In the following scene, Claire learns that Isaac performed the surgery on Topa because he wanted the crew members to like him again. Sensing that Isaac has slight emotions in him despite being a robot, Claire asks him out for dinner. The latter agrees. The next day, Kelly calls Topa to the bridge where all the crew members are happily waiting for her. Mercer offers his chair to her, addressing her as a captain, and allows her to guide the crew as they fly away. Meanwhile, Bortus and Kelly watch her with pride as she orders them to engage the quantum drive. The scene then cuts to Malloy hosting a party in his quarters. During the party, Charlie finds the cell phone that Malloy had synthesized to text back and forth with the simulation of Laura. He begins to reminisce about his former love, but eventually, much like the relationship, he shakes it off with a smile and takes a selfie with Charlie and Bortus. Later, Lamar and Isaac show Mercer and Kelly the updates they made to the Aronov device, a cone-shaped mechanism that can create a temporal field. Lamar utilizes Malloy's sandwich to showcase what the machine can do by sending it a few seconds back in time and forward 3 months. Next, Mercer and Kelly update Admiral Perry regarding the advanced Aronov device. To ensure the device doesn't fall into the hands of the Kaylon or the Krill, Perry plans to send a convoy to escort the Orville to the maximum security research station. When the Orville arrives at the research station, Kaylon vessels pursue and hail them. The Kaylon demand Mercer hand over the Aronov device. In the chaos, Malloy volunteers to run down to the lab to destroy it, to ensure a powerful tool like that is never in the hands of their enemies. As he does, the Orville unleashes a massive blast from their quantum drive to try and shake free from a Kaylon tractor beam, and Malloy is sent flying in a flurry of multi-dimensional time distortions. Suddenly, he vanishes. Next, the crew realizes Malloy's missing, but they can't find his traces on the ship. As the team begin to unravel what might have happened to him, they receive a message from Malloy that has been traveling to their coordinates for nearly 400 years. He has been sent back to 2015, is now trapped in time, and seeks rescue. Turns out Malloy has already died on Earth in 2068, at the age of 96. Lamar believes they can bring back Malloy by utilizing the coordinates he sent with his transmission and the upgraded Aronov device. Soon, Isaac oversees the time jump, and Orville leaps 400 years into the past. Unfortunately, they arrive in 2025, not 2015, meaning Malloy already spent a decade in the 21st century. Meanwhile, Isaac uses a holographic generator to change his appearance and looks human-like earlier. Then, he, Mercer, Kelly, and Charlie take a shuttle to the Earth. Upon landing the Earth, the crew splits into pairs. While Mercer and Kelly track down Malloy, Charlie and Isaac search for the optimal drilling spot to extract dysonium for the ship to go back home. Later, Kelly and Mercer find Malloy at an airport, where he works as a commercial pilot. A shocked Malloy can't believe they finally came for him after 10 years in 2025. Malloy drives them to his house and introduces them to his wife, Laura Huggins, and his son, Edward. Also, Laura is pregnant. Next, Mercer and Kelly have lunch with Malloy and Laura as they recount how they met. Then, Mercer and Kelly pull Malloy aside for an honest chat. Malloy refuses to go home, even though he's broken countless temporal laws. When Mercer threatens to drag Malloy against his will and take him back, the latter discloses that he waited 3 years for the Orville to save him. He explains camping in a cabin and killing animals with his gun to eat, and survived for 3 whole years. Eventually, he gave up on his crew finding him and ventured out into the world, accepting that this was his new reality. As Laura overhears the conversation, Malloy asks Kelly and Mercer to leave. Then, he reveals everything to his wife. However, she doesn't seem surprised because she reveals she always thought Malloy was different. Malloy vows not to leave her and their kids, since he fell in love with her 300 years after she died. Malloy doesn't want to lose her. Elsewhere, Isaac and Charlie arrive at an empty house in a residential neighborhood. As the realtor gives them a tour of the house, Charlie asks to see the basement. Downstairs, she sends away the realtor, claiming she and Isaac have to discuss the purchase of the house. Once she leaves, Isaac and Charlie are able to extract dysonium that helps them to take the ship back home. Back at Malloy's house, Mercer, Kelly, and Kiali barge into the living room. They urge Malloy to accompany them. If doesn't oblige, Kiali will forcefully transport him back to the Orville. Malloy refuses to leave without his family, but Mercer and Kelly remind him that they cannot return to their timeline. Meanwhile, Mercer gets a call from Isaac, who had come up with an idea to utilize the dysonium to go to 2015 to retrieve Malloy before he meets Laura. Although Malloy points his stun gun and tries to stop his crew, they don't listen to him and head towards Isaac and Charlie. After the crew departs, Malloy kisses Laura and embraces his family, vowing always to love them. Back in the ship, Mercer and the crew utilize Malloy's 2015 coordinates, the Aronov device, and their new Dysonium reserves to arrive in the correct time frame. Instead of spending a decade on Earth, Malloy only spent 1 month in a solitary cabin, and he doesn't recall anything from his time with Laura because that hasn't happened yet. After retrieving Malloy, the Aronov device looks damaged. Just then, Lamar suggests removing the quantum field and flying the ship as close to the speed of light as possible to travel 400 years into the future. With Mercer's approval, Lamar implements his plan and it surprisingly works. Finally, the crew lands in the correct timeline and docks at the station for some repairs. At the end of the episode, Mercer and Kelly have drinks with Malloy and reveal what happened. Although the two feel terrible for dragging Malloy away from a well-established family life, the latter doesn't blame them. In fact, he's happy they did the right thing and saved the timeline from being altered. Also, Malloy praises them for prioritizing duty above all else, and apologizes for his behavior in 2025. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn the notifications on so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.